So this recording is about Coretta Scott King. This is part of a segment called Hidden in Plain Sight, and it's about women from Black history who we don't really get to hear much about. Now, I know that Coretta Scott King is insanely famous. We all know the name, we know of her, but we don't really know much about her, or at least I can be honest and say I didn't know much about her. So this is me taking my opportunity to try and spread some extra information about her and get it out there. If you're unfamiliar with who I am the Black History Buff 777. You can find me on Instagram at Black History Buff 777. You can also find me on Facebook at Black History Buff 777. You can also find me on Patreon at Black History Buff 777 and on Facebook and Twitter at, amazingly, the inspirationally named Black History Buff 777. Yes, the name is Black History Buff 777. Please find me on Spotify, find me on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, especially on Patreon, because if you find me on Patreon, you'll actually find that you can get lots of goodies on there. There are teaching resources, videos, audio recordings, notes. There's going to be clothing going up soon. So Patreon is really the place to be if you want to find me, if you want to find more work, if you want to know what I'm really doing, if you want to get a little bit closer, if you're interested in my learning journey, if you have children and you're interested in teaching them, if you are a school teacher and you want some resources or some ideas for resources, Patreon is where you're going to find all that good stuff until my website goes up. So anyway, let's begin. So this recording is about Coretta Scott King. 2 quotes from her. I am not a symbol, I am an activist. Second quote from her. The media never understood Martin, so they will never understand Coretta. Coretta Scott King was born in Marion, Alabama, April 27th, 1927. The third of 4 children, her mother, Bernice McMurray Scott, was famous locally for her singing voice and fiercely committed to the education of her children. My children are going to college, even if it means I only have but one dress to put on, is a quote from her. I love that quote. It sounds like something my mum would say. Her father, Obi, a former policeman turned businessman, was one of the first people in their town to own a car. He and Bernice ran a clothing store, a general store, and a lumber mill. While not a wealthy family, the Scotts' modest financial success drew envy from some of the locals, who in an act of racial hatred burned down 2 of the Scotts' businesses. To help support the family during the Great Depression of the 1930s, a young Coretta worked picking cotton. I just want to talk a little bit about the Great Depression here, just to add some context into the time and why she would need to pick cotton.
1929. The financial house of cards collapses, and the overinflated stock market plunges into a Great Depression. A financial panic grips the world. For the majority, it means the interminable line outside factory gates, desperately hoping for a job that rarely comes. It means hunger and the march of the unemployed in the nation's capital. With acute domestic problems, America would now isolate herself more than ever from the international scene. It started in America, but practically overnight an economic blizzard swept the world. In Japan, France, Britain, always the unemployed, the soup kitchens, the grinding poverty, and the despair.
Coretta, 10 years of age, had already experienced racial terrorism and witnessed the devastating effects of poverty firsthand. And when you look at who she would become and the role she played in later life, you can almost see the hidden hand of fate shaping her into the woman that Martin and the world would need her to be. At age 12, Coretta started at Lincoln Elementary School, and due to the deep segregation in the South, had to be bused 8 miles there and back. And who was the bus driver? Yep, Bernice Scott, Coretta's mother, who bussed all the local children to school. Bernice was a remarkable woman in her own right. She only had a fourth grade education herself, which only fueled her determination that all of her children would have a first rate education. And I have this image of her in my head, kind of talking to herself, saying, "You kids are going to school even if I have to drive you there myself," which indeed she did.
My mother was the kind of quiet, determined person who said, my children will get an education if I don't have but one dress to put on. So I always knew that I was going to college, and I knew that I wanted to prepare myself because I had to free myself from the conditions of segregation and discrimination that I had grown up under. And in that process, I felt that it was important that I come back south and that I make my own contribution.
At school, Coretta thrived, probably because she had to give her mum a school report there and back every day, becoming the leading soprano for the school senior chorus, playing piano and trumpet, and graduating valedictorian in 1945. That same summer, Coretta applied for and was accepted into Antioch College in Yellow Springs, Ohio, majoring in education. Coretta's elder sister, Edith, had already become the first African American to enter the college 2 years previously. "One child down," I can hear her mother say. It is here at Antioch where Coretta became politically active. The motto for Antioch was, "Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity." And I just want to take this opportunity again to kind of just point out fate nudging Coretta to being this great woman. Her mother was a staunch educationalist. Her sister was the first colored person to attend this famous college with such an amazing motto. The motto of that same college was, "Be ashamed to die until you've won some victory for humanity." Again, you can just see like destiny just nudging her towards who she needed to become.